everyone, and welcome to another episode of I Was There with Dave Munoz as he takes us through a journey through legends in rock and roll, all aided with his trusty camera. He's gotten some incredible, amazing shots of the biggest stars that no one has ever seen before. Now today, Dave, we're talking Bruce Springsteen. Tell me what the atmosphere about Bruce is at this time, and were you excited to see this show?
Yeah, I was really on the edge of my seat to see this show after just being completely blown away in '78 at Winterland, unexpectedly so. But some of the things that were different about this tour as well, and this was when he was touring the album The River. For Bruce had some legal issues after Born to Run and was not able to record anything for 2 or 3 years, and people wondered, since Born to Run was such a powerful album, how he was going to follow up. And he came out with Darkness on the Edge of Town, which is an incredible album. And then, as you progress through that, you got to keep getting better and better. And he did that again with The River. And it was 83 minutes of almost all hits. He just, kept hammering and hammering again, much like he did at '78 at Winterland. But the biggest difference, though, was the intimacy that was lost. Whereas before he was playing 4,000 to 5,000 seat stadiums, now he's playing 15,000 seat stadiums, and it's a different feel for that as well. Okay. Not that he wasn't able to fill the auditorium.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point you make, because you did get a chance to see him when he wasn't mega Bruce Springsteen. Has he ever been like that again, or is it because you said you've seen him 60, 70 times at this point? Have you ever seen him quite like it was the first time in '78?
No, because that he became a megastar. Darkness on the Edge of Town, which was that '78 tour, just sent him over the top, and then he came back and pounded with The River, and just those days of the small venues were all but gone.
Okay, so he's touring the River album. This is the second time you're going to see him, and what was the show like? Did it take that first experience you had to a whole nother level? Did it kind of plateau? Was it a little worse than your first show? Was there so much nostalgia packed into that first concert? How was the show? What do you remember about it?
It was kind of like revisiting a vacation spot that you couldn't go to enough. It really was, because as he kicked in there too, the energy was there. He knew what he had to do, and he did it and then some. As far as exceeding, and then there was a lot of people there that had heard about shows and really want to see, is this Bruce Springsteen guy for real? So not only had he become a mega star, but out in California, which he hadn't been there for a couple of years, people, there was a lot of anticipation for, what they heard were these great shows, and let's see just how great this guy is.
Wow. I want to take a quick detour, I guess. Let's talk about the Ticketron scam. Was there something going on there at this time? And
and that's another one of the differences, and it's so sad, and it just irritated me. To this day, it still goes on. For the longest time, what you would do is, the outlets that we had, and I talked about previous shows about we'd go to the outlets to get some of the best shows. But just as an example for this one, the best tickets were going to be at the Oakland Arena itself, right next to the Oakland Coliseum. And my sister and her boyfriend stood in line for probably the better part of 4 or 5 hours. People came out from the Coliseum, and it was a long, long line of people out there. And they came out and they gave all these people little stubs that said, "Your guaranteed tickets, we'll get you through, your guaranteed tickets." And they were probably 500 people from the front of it when they came out and said, "Sorry, we're sold out," because the scalpers had taken over the tickets. And that was the first time I'd really heard of the scalpers hacking Ticketron or whatever they happen to do. And what's really unfortunate about that is it hasn't changed, to my knowledge, since, with a lot of things. And it's just, in fact, they wrote a book about the scam of Ticketron, about how people got the best seats, scalpers got the best seats, so you were buying $30 seats for $100, and they're making tons of money just taking advantage of the crowd, and that was very tough to deal with.
Yeah, that's a shame. You would think that this stuff would get much, much better, and I think advancements have been made, but man, what a wild thing to be happening where, these people have taken over basically the tickets. And so were you affected by that personally, or were you able to get tickets?
No, because I actually had a friend of mine that everybody's got a connection. So I had several connections where I was able to get those, but I was only able to get 2 tickets. So, and my sister wanted to go with her boyfriend as well. So, and actually the second ticket I got was for myself and Kevin, my same concert buddy too, that went along. So, but it was it's just sad because the music industry tends to be kind of a slimy business anyways with all the people that are involved, the non-musical side or the non-talent side of business.
Absolutely. I want to move forward from there to the E Street Band and how they were playing with Bruce, and how was that experience?
Well, as Bruce refers to them as the heart-stopping, pants-dropping, house-rocking, earthquaking, booty-shaking, Viagra-taking, love-making, legendary E Street Band. His band was incredible.
Yeah.
When you take a look at the big man, Clarence Clemens, who plays tenor sax with more, he plays with a lot of balls. He's unbelievable. He was incredible. Whenever he got up and got to the front of the stage, the place just went berserk all the time. Bruce's drummer is Max Weinberg, Mighty Max Weinberg, who was just phenomenal. I'm just amazed that he doesn't destroy more drum sets as intense as he plays. He's got a gentleman on keyboards, Danny Federici, which was funny because he had some legal trouble early in his life too, so they weren't sure if he was going to be at shows, and sometimes he'd be at shows, then he'd be gone. So his nickname became Danny, now you see him, now you don't, Federici.
Wow.
So which was funny. And his piano player is a guy named Roy Bittan, who they call the Professor. Just a brilliant person. In fact, Bruce went on his own for a little bit, a number of years later, and Roy was the only one with the band that he did take with him. So, and then Miami Steve Van Zandt is his guitar player, and who's also an incredible musician. And they round the band out with bass player Gary Talent. So overall, incredible talent in all places in his band. It wasn't by accident that they made such a big sound.
Wow, like you said in the previous episode, it was hard to even reach for the camera. You were so in the moment. What was this concert like in comparison to the previous one in terms of length?
He probably went for some 30 to 40 years of doing 3.5 to 4 hour shows. Where most artists, if you get 2 hours, you're feeling pretty good about it. Usually it's an hour and 45 minutes, so you'll see that. And with Bruce, it was a hard, solid 2 hours, come back and give it another rip for it, and encores following that. So it was probably between 3.5 and 4 hours. So as far as length of shows, 78 to 80, not much difference.
But it's still just as much energy.
Yeah, and that's a good point too, because when you're on a stage with 1,500 people, that's a little different than trying to, excite 15,000 people. And he was able to, because the sound was so big and everything else.
The shots. So what kind of pictures were you able to get, and what was the greatest moment you were able to capture?
The tandem of Bruce and Clarence Clemens, in fact, looks kind of like this. That shot's from that concert.
Wow.
But just the tandem of how they worked together and how they really were almost one. Where a lot of times too, when they were together, you'd see Bruce with his head on, because Clarence is a big man. He played college football with some guys who went on to play in the NFL. Him being so big and Bruce being probably all of about 5'7", it was really funny to see, the two together. But the energy that they created together was phenomenal.
Talk about this photo a little bit more. So the lighting there, was it all dark and red?
Oh, it was tough.
Yeah,
I do recall that too. It was very tough, and you can see with this too a lot of the reds, which is so incredibly hard to focus on, because I was always pretty serious about trying to get that great shot. But with this, I didn't want to spend too much time behind the camera, much like the Winterland show, because I didn't want to miss anything that was going there. Because I'm no more than about probably 15 feet away from the stage for that too. And I've got some other ones. I've got some nice shots too of the band, as they took their first bow after the first set.
Wow, some incredible shots here, Dave, as always. Anything else about this 1980s concert and 1980s Bruce Springsteen that we should know?
Yeah, when 1980 hit, I was living in Las Vegas. So I flew up for the show to San Francisco or to Oakland to see that. I also flew to San Diego to see him, and I flew to Los Angeles twice to see him. So inside of about 3 weeks, I probably saw him 4 times.
Wow.
The show was good. Yeah, and each time I not drugged, but each time I pulled along 3 or 4 friends with me too, because they'd not seen him and not really knew of him. Wow. And they all became Springsteen fans as well.
Wow. Do you feel like there's an element, and we'll end on this, do you feel like there's an element of Springsteen that you can't get from the albums that you can only get in the concerts?
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, when you listen to a scale of 1 to 10, he's about a 10 or 12 live. And with his albums, especially with the first couple, you don't get that feeling. You're looking at maybe 6, 7, maybe 8.
Wow.
And then when you sit back and listen to some of the lyrics, some of the stories he tells, once you've seen him live, you listen to those much differently.
Wow. So there you have it from Dave Munoz himself. There's an element to Bruce's shows that you can only get there. And for those of you who can't, he's got the photos for you to experience the next best thing. So
There you go.
Dave, thank you so much for sharing this little bit of Bruce's history and your experience and your photos. Incredible exclusive photos premiered right here on the show. So Dave, thanks so much for your time. Be sure to subscribe and click the bell, as we've got even more coming your way, more exclusive photos, more stories from Dave. Once again, the man who's been at so many legendary rock concerts and gotten some incredible images. I'm Chris Grant Jr. Thanks, Dave.
You bet.
Take care.